Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Laura Watson, and on this channel we learn about watercolor botanicals. Today I'm going to show you the process I take to paint this sprig of holly just in time for Christmas. I start off by transferring the drawing that I made from my reference material from my tracing paper to my watercolor paper. I'm using 140 pound cold pressed fluid brand paper that I have in a sketchbook, and I'm just going over the tracing paper with my mechanical pencil and transferring it to the watercolor paper. I'm jumping right into the painting now using step 1 of my 3-step painting method, which is getting the base color down and leaving the highlights for all of the leaves and berries. And because holly has really shiny leaves, there's really sort of more drastic highlights, so I'm leaving hard edges right now. It looks kind of funny the way it is right now, but trust me, at the end it'll look good. So I'm just hard edged areas for the white reflected areas right now. So I'm just painting around them, not blending, not using wet on wet. So this is wet on dry for step 1. And I'm looking at my reference material and just sort of leaving those white spaces in roughly the same area where I see the highlights. I'm making sure that I have a nice sort of strong watery to milky paint consistency with lots of pigment mixed up, and I'm keeping my colors nice and strong. If they get sort of dilute, then I'm mixing up more color, and that is key for making my painting process work with the 3-step painting method. I'm also making sure that I'm using different greens because not each holly leaf is the same green the way the light hits it, with different sort of shadows and pigments in the leaves. So I usually have at least 3 to 4 different greens mixed up for my botanical painting, and you can see that the top leaves are a little bit lighter and yellower than the bottom leaves, and that makes sense because in botanical paintings typically our light source is coming from the top left hand corner, and that's how I am painting the painting that you are looking at right now. So I've just added in a few more leaves, and now I'm adding in an even darker leaf, still working on step 1, just getting those base layers in. And I'm using a Kolinsky Sable round brush, and I'm just dragging that all along, making sure that my leaves are dry before I remove some of the pencil line there with my kneaded eraser. Now that I have the first layer of my leaves dried, I'm starting in on the berries, and I'm using my smaller brush still and starting with step 1 again. This is wet on dry. I'm painting the darkest area of the berries first and then fading out my color into the lighter areas. And I'm also leaving hard edge highlights here because again, the berries are really shiny, so I don't want to lose that highlight. I'm carefully painting the berry behind the leaf there that overlaps, and then adding this darker berry behind the front berry as well. I'm making sure again that I have at least 3 to 4 different reds mixed up so that I have lots of tonal variation and have a nice deep concentrated sort of reddish purple for the little berry stems as well as the shadow areas on the berries. Now I'm starting on to step 2 of my 3-step painting method, which is adding contour lines and veining. So I've switched to my smallest brush, and now I'm adding veins on the holly leaves. I am lightly dragging those veins through the highlight areas. As we move on with the painting, these highlights are not going to be these stark white patches. And I'm very lightly adding in the veins so that they're not too heavily pigmented, and making sure I wiggle my hand because they're not completely stick straight lines either. And I'm looking at my reference photo just to make sure that I'm following the pattern of growth. And then I'm going to jump right into step 3 of the leaves, which is adding more tone and form and contrast. So this is wet on dry, usually with a much darker color, and I paint small areas of pigment and then rinse out my brush and blend them out. So the goal of my painting process is still to leave lots of step 1 and 2, those first layers, showing through, and step 3 is simply to add contrast and depth and color in areas that need more pigment, or areas that will be shadow, or even areas that are going to show the form of the plant or the leaves by the way the contour of the leaf is. So you can see on this top leaf here, I've added quite a bit more paint, and you can see it's starting to look a bit more three-dimensional rather than the other leaves that I haven't done this. And I'm also using a little chisel brush now to blend out the areas of those hard highlights so that they don't have super hard edges now, and they're a bit softer, and it starts to pull together the leaf. So I'm doing this way so that I don't lose the white paper, because you want blended color, lots of highly pigmented dark green, and then these nice transitions into really bright highlights. And this is quite hard to achieve unless you add a hard edged highlight and then blend it out like this. I've had a lot of trouble painting holly in the past because the leaves are tricky to achieve with the glossy deep colors. So I'm continuing on with the other leaves, and I'm making sure that I also define the edges and make sure that all the edges are tidy on my holly leaves, because they do have those pointed edges, and usually there's a little bit of a lighter area or darker area around these curves. And then we will also add in the thorns at the very end as well, which are usually a bit lighter green than the darker green. But right now I'm just working on building up more shape and form using step 3 of my 3-step painting method, and I'm even just adding in darker color now with my smallest brush so that I don't lose too much of my first layers showing through. Otherwise my leaf is just going to look like a dark green blob, and everything I did before won't really have amounted to much. I'm also using my little chisel brush just to blend out a few areas where I've painted over with the darker green, just to give a little bit more color variation and create more shape and form with the light and dark for the contours of the leaves. And if you're taking more time to create more of a realistic painting, then this is a step that can be helpful. And now all of the leaves have had a sort of step 3 treatment to them, and now I'm going around and sort of doing more finishing touches. So I'm adding in some veins again over where I'd first done the step 2 veins, just because I've lost them a little. So sometimes you'll just need to redefine things a bit when you're looking at your painting and sort of adjusting contrast levels. And then I'm also sort of redefining edges a little bit more, or blending things out. So just sort of making adjustments and finishing touches. And now I'm just going to jump right back into the stem here. I've got my actual holly, and I'm just looking at that. And I'm just going to add more color now to the stem and more contrast. If you hear any background noises, it's because I have my baby on my lap as I'm doing my voiceover, so there's some grunting noises in the background. And so back to the painting, I'm just again going around now, defining the edges, and I'm actually adding in the little thorns now that are coming off the spines of the holly leaf. So I'm just finishing up defining those edges and just making sure that everything is nice and crisp. And I've taken my chisel brush again with my clean paper towel and clean damp water, and I'm just lifting out a little bit more highlight on the stem. I'm going to be adding more color to the stem now. I kind of just had the step 1 down, so I've mixed up a little red into my green to make it more of a brown color, and I'm adding some stippling and just a little bit of contouring, sort of step 2 of the stem here, because it's not a perfectly green stem. There's little knobs and imperfections. So I've mixed up a much darker color, and I'm doing the final sort of contrast areas of step 3 on the stem here of the holly, making really high contrast and exaggerating that more so than what you'd see in the reference photo, so it's more three-dimensional. And doing the same now for the holly berries. I'm just adding darker red, and then you'll see here that it moves to my final look of the berries with more shadow and that purpley red color as well, that I'll even use for the berry stems. And now they look a lot more three-dimensional, and I still have those really strong highlights on the berries as well. And then for the final touch of the berries, I'm just adding in the little dried up sepals with a dark sort of brown, purple, red to finish off this beautiful little holly portrait. Thanks for watching this video to the end, guys. If you do want more instruction to learn about my 3-step painting method and how to do this project step by step with all the footage, then click the link in the video description below. I do have a full-length class posted on my brand new website, and it also will show you all of the materials that you'll need and all of the color mixes of what paint colors I use to create this beautiful holly portrait. Make sure you subscribe to my channel so that you get notified when I post a new video, and I'll see you in the next one.